Hi everyone, welcome. I'm about to check in on these European night crawlers that live in these bins over here. I've got my glove on, I'm all set to go. But before we begin, I figured I'd share some info about the systems with you. They're 160 days in service now, and it's been 14 feedings that they've gotten over that time with these romaine hearts. So this was one that I cut in half. And this was the leftover of one, so it's not an entire one. That one I just cut in half the other way. And the smaller one, the partially eaten one, is even wrapped in a piece of complimentary bedding, paper towel, paper wrap that I figured I would just leave right on there. So the novelty in this system over here, no, both systems, what am I talking about? Because I cut it in half. I took a wool sweater, and 42 days ago, 6 weeks ago, we placed half of the sweater into bin number 1 and the other half into bin number 2. And for me, this is the first time experimenting with the composting of wool fabric in my worm bins. On a number of occasions, I've composted cotton successfully, numerous different types of materials and items, towels, t-shirts, socks. Trying to think if there was anything else. But for me, wool, this is the first attempt at composting wool. Looks like we left a nice top coating of leafy matter out here for these little guys. You know, I didn't refill the box. I'm wondering if we should maybe just try to preserve some of this leafy matter. Nudge it off to the side, and then we can maybe spread it back out because it's so nice looking on the top surface. My preference would have been to simply blend it in and incorporate it into the bedding down low. Alternatively, we could always collect the stuff and drop it down into the feeding zones as sort of the foundational bedding to accompany the feeding. But I haven't had a chance to go outside to reload on my leaf supply box. It's already been taken upstairs. It's in the kitchen, but I've yet to take it outside and restock my supply. Man, there's a lot of springtail activity down here. And for whatever reason, they're very drawn to this piece of paper. I'm wondering if I should watch the video from last time to see what was in contact with this paper that's making it so interesting for the springtails. The stuff we fed them last time, 10 days ago, was all stuff that didn't get the typical treatment like what this lettuce got here. You can see some of the frost on there. Everything that I give my worms for the most part is thrown in the freezer. Man, more springtails. The last feeding consisted of some potato that had been cooked already. So instead of being frozen, it was cooked. And then let's see, the whole meal was unfrozen stuff, setting it apart from the typical feedings you see down here. I think there was coffee, there was the cooked potato, something else. I think there might have been bagel. I think there was some sort of a baked good in there. So we've been very careful during each check-in on these systems to make sure we do minimal impact to the wool sweater while we're attempting to get our feedings in here. So we've done little more than dig down to the point where it becomes exposed, and I believe like right here is a piece of the fabric that we're seeing. And there's a couple worms camped out on it. But we've done little more than that as far as giving ourselves a chance to check it out. I've done other fabrics in the past where for some reason the number 100 sticks in my mind, only because I made like this thing out of the devil's in the details sort of thinking, because I was composting some sort of cotton fabric. I would say 99% of the stuff was gone except for maybe some sort of little thread that held the fabric garment together, and I kept holding out on stopping the day count based on that little tiny bit of material where I think in reality it was fair to say that you know, all the cotton had been pretty much consumed already. The fact that there was just this little holdout of material that the worms had simply not been able to break down quite yet made me keep counting and counting and counting the days another extra couple weeks. I think I eventually stopped at 123 days, where we announced that the fabric was completely broken down and gone and consumed. But I think in the back of my mind I always really treat 100 days as the more realistic number to use as far as the time it took. And it does seem to me there's many other variables too. It's not just the amount of time. There's probably the moisture, there's probably the number of worms. Clearly that would be a big variable. And I also think that there's the whole thing of how much of the fabric is obscuring itself from access, you know? How much of this stuff is sort of in the middle of a big tight wad of material where perhaps the worms are able to come at it from the outside outer surface, but everything inside is, you know, inaccessible and making no progress. So I think I'm combining two things here. We're satisfying my curiosity a little bit to see how the fabric's coming along after this much time by excavating it as much as we just did. We've not yet done this much as far as exposing it, but I also believe that by doing it this way we can better apply the foods that we're going to give them today directly to the fabric, so that, you know, I don't know, I'm just theorizing that that's one way to possibly maximize worm traffic to the fabric. So the nice fresh foods are going to go straight directly onto the fabric, and then back in can come in some of this leftover stuff. You know, we had a feeding zone indicator which was holding up pretty good, and since I don't have any coffee to give them today, I think we're going to retain the feeding zone indicators, these coffee filters, for one more round and use them in that same capacity. But all this other stuff, newspaper I assume was top coating type stuff, but got pretty haggard and got elevated to a higher, more important function of being counterpart to the feeding rather than just resting out on the top surface. So we pretty much took bin number 1 all the way to the finish line and never even peeked into bin number 2 here other than brushing some leaves aside. But I believe now that we kind of know what to expect, since these bins are very similarly managed, we could probably also do a nice careful excavation of the fabric here to give ourselves a little glimpse at how it's coming along, but more importantly to be able to spread it out nice and neatly so that when we put this romaine lettuce in here, it's going to be resting right on top of the wool, and hopefully, since worms will be right there, hopefully the worms will also start to take a shine to the wool fabric and start nibbling on that too. Alright. I think we've more or less excavated it. Somehow I felt like I was a little bit more precise on doing this over in bin number 1. Bin number 2 here seems like things are a little bit more all over the place. There's this little interesting little pockets of worms all over the place. Definitely makes me wonder what it is that they're so drawn to. Is it the cooked potato that they got? That was kind of the main event as far as that being the stuff that they got in the greatest quantity, I believe. The bread, you know, maybe the perhaps the bagel had something to do with all the worms were saying, but whatever the case may be, I don't know. It is just nice to see nice busy bins, you know, busy bins with all kinds of happy worms hanging out and doing our bidding down here, trying to get our compostable materials broken down in the worm bins. So I think I returned all the leftovers I encountered along the way back down into the feeding zone. I'm not sure if the grit's going to be also possibly something that helps the worms break down the wool, but if nothing else, the worms will definitely come out for the grit too, because that's just one of their favorite things to pick off when it becomes available. So I think what we're going to do here is we're going to follow through with something I've done in a few of my systems, and I don't even remember if we did that here recently, which was to not disturb or excavate or till up the outer edges of the systems. What is it, banana peel? Let's make sure the banana peel's right here in the middle by the rest of the other foods. Oh, and this is that chestnut shell. Yeah, a little bit more disorderly over here in bin number 2, where I attempted to speed things along and cookie cutter my way through getting things done, following suit with what was done in the other bin. But trying to think, felt like I was in the middle of trying to say something, and I also felt like I didn't really complete the thought. And it'll probably come to me as soon as I cut the camera, but whatever. I guess I'm just sort of rambling on here, enjoying our fun little check-in with the Euros. This was a pretty cool check-in. I definitely like the way things are looking here. I like that the great deal of worm activity hanging out down where the fabric is. And I also like the moisture level in here, you know. I didn't feel like there was any necessity to add moisture. In fact, when we first came in here, the glistening moisture out here on these leaves on top just looked so sharp. And somehow I believe that the worms probably agree that it is pretty cool that way, because, you know, worms like moisture. If they don't get moisture, they don't even go there. They're not interested. So keeping everything nice and moist and damp and cozy so that the worms can come and go at their leisure, that's always a good recipe for success in the worm bins. So, all right, everyone, that's it for our check-in with the Euros and the wool fabric. Not sure if we observed much, if any, actual status on the breakdown of the wool. I know that there were a few little moth holes on it, so it will be hard to distinguish if it's those or worm activity showing up. So that's it for the video, everyone. I got a few things I got to take care of getting cleaned up, put away, but I'm not going to waste your time with that. Before I go, really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.